Hello, Facebook family and friends. How are you today? It's Moss from Investor Partner Group. I have CEO here with me as well. Today, actually, I'll give a few minutes for people to join and say hello. If you can hear us clearly, please drop in the comments and hit the like button or give us a thumbs up so that we can see and know that you can hear us properly. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, give us a thumbs up, guys, if you're hearing us live this morning, and I'll just check it to see. So yes, guys, Moss, let us know what we're going to
Yes.
talk about today.
Yes. So again, I think this is a very interesting topic for today. I've seen a lot of clients feeling this, and the topic for today is why do active investors fail? So what are the real reasons an active investor would fail? And we will talk about what is the difference between a proactive investor and a reactive investor, and what. And when we say why does an active investor fail, what we would really be testing out today is, well, the person has done all the right thing. They've engaged, they've gone out, bought the property, but they've still hasn't seen the growth coming, hasn't really been successful. And every time I hear that story, I always relate it to myself and say, well, what have I done differently versus what these people are doing differently? So it's a great topic. Feel free to jump in, ask a lot of questions. I'll be upfront and honest and, accountable and share as much as I could.
Yeah, good morning, guys. I can see Michael Short, you're joining us, and I'm assuming you're giving us a thumbs up because you can hear us loud and clear. And for the others that are joining in as well, just give us a thumbs up if you can hear us. And so Moss, you mentioned today we're going to talk about some of the effects of investors who might be reactive in their investment strategies. So also we've got Shazad, I think that's how I pronounce it, and we'll
Hey, Shazad. Hey, Michael.
Flemel and Robert Duncan. Good morning. So great, guys. Also, so Moss, talking about some of the consequences of being a reactive investor. I know you have a lot of questions and people reaching out with this certain situation, and I think it's something you relate to as well. Why is this topic something that's close to you, and why do you want to talk about this today?
Well, it's quite interesting. So you would see people starting the journey at the same time, similar profile, similar serviceability, similar cash flow, and you would see one has done significantly well and the other hasn't done significantly well. So I've met a few people over the past couple of months, and some people who've been my clients, and I always test to compare and see what has my clients done differently versus these people, because they had the same opportunity available to them. So why did they end up being so differently, 7 years, 8 years, or 10 years down the track? So that is the real reason that we are going to talk to. And more importantly, our final or like the peak of the conversation would be, how do you change that sort of mindset? How do you, go from being a reactive investor to a proactive investor? So.
Yep. And just to clarify, what is a proactive investor and what's a reactive investor, and how are they? Let me know if you can still hear me. I can see my internet connection might be dropping out. But yeah, so what's the difference between a proactive investor and a reactive investor? And what things are they aware of being a proactive investor that a reactive investor might not be aware of?
Yeah, so there are key differences between what a proactive investor and a reactive investor, is, and let me dive deeper into what does that each, proactive and reactive means. Proactive investor is someone who would have a strategy in place, who has an end goal in place, who invests based on evidence, never leaves money on the table, and is a confident decision maker. You have reactive investors, who would invest by looking at the rearview mirror. They're not outcome driven. They're making decisions based on FOMO, based on emotions, always leaves money on the table, and their decision making is, scared, decision making. So they're not really thinking through as to why they should be investing. They would be investing based on the residual serviceability or the residual deposit, the residual cash flow that they have to invest. And sometimes the difference between being successful and not being successful is basically not using the serviceability. For example, you might have access to, $250,000, and you might not be able to find the right sort of property in that right sort of ballpark. So that means that you don't need to go out and buy something. Think from that perspective. Have a clear strategy in that space is very important, and also understanding what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. So a proactive investor would always have that in mind and always have that outlook whenever they're investing, versus a reactive investor.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned there a proactive investor make sure that they never leave money on the table, whereas a reactive investor leaves money on the table. Can you just give us an example as to what that means before we move forward here? And guys who are listening, if you have any questions as well, make sure you add your comments into the comments below, and then we'll make sure we answer it within the live.
Well, leaving money on the table and not leaving money on the table is potentially meaning that you're optimizing any decision that you're making. For example, if there is a property within your portfolio which has a development potential, or a renovation potential, or you can add or manufacture or force equity on it, then a proactive investor would always have that in their forefront mind and would do that before making a sale. Whereas a reactive investor, would look at the property and say, okay, I would just sell it and make some money, whether it be growth, non-growth. So when you say they're leaving money on the table, that means that they're leaving that money for someone else to grab.
Yep. I hear you. So, and then what are the symptoms of the or the problems of reactive investors that they face?
Well, the symptoms of the reactive investors, and I can guarantee a lot of people would be able to align this, or a lot of people would be able to read into these symptoms is, one, they are driven by FOMO. So majority of them would end up making wrong decisions because they are so driven by FOMO. They are in this constant, emotion of analysis paralysis. They do more analysis and they don't take actions. They are also the type of people where you would see that, they would pick up the wrong team, or, pick up the wrong time, or pick up the wrong properties, so gullible, really, really gullible, easy to manufacture, easily to manipulate. They are also the people who might think that they have the strategy, but they might have the wrong strategy. So they're chasing the wrong things at the wrong time. So when it comes to, creating wealth through property, there's only three things. I always say growth, yield, return, and different based on your, value life cycle or the property life cycle. You should be chasing different things. And these people would know about these things, but they would be chasing the wrong things at the wrong time. You would find that they get really, really frustrated, the reactive investors, because of this analysis paralysis, where they cannot reach a decision making sort of thing. And also, some of them would, try to save more money so that they can invest more money into the property, while, cutting corners of having a good team beside them, only to find out that they are even much more worse. There are numerous number of examples where, people would avoid using buyer's agents, or avoid using a good JV partner, or avoid using a good builder, only to find out that because, they were trying to cut corners and save money so that they can grow their wealth, they have actually been worse off than before.
Yeah. Can you give a specific example as to if you can maybe think of someone that you've that has approached you, or a similar situation that you see time and time again? What financial position are they at, and what kind of portfolio do they have, and how is this a problem for them?
Yeah, and look, I think you would see a lot of reactive investors. At least I would meet a lot of reactive investors on a day-to-day, when I come across them. And you would see that, either they are the type of people who have acquired a few properties and they're driven by this dilemma that, because they have 4 properties, they've done quite well. But, there has not been any valuation or any growth in their portfolios. Then there are people, who are close to hitting the serviceability trap, or, hitting that sort of ballpark, ceiling, and they don't know what to do from there. There are people And then there are people who might have used some buyer's agents based on someone's advice, or have listened to, people, just because a lot of people are listening to them, whether it be a podcast or a particular person, and just taking some decisions based on that without realizing that, they should be doing their own research and evidence, to follow their dream, only to find out that they've followed the herd and end up buying at the peak. And, now they are in that mode where, they have bought something at the peak. There is no growth. They're waiting. The yield is there, but, there is not much that they can do. So yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what type of properties these are that they've bought at the peak, and then they may not be getting the results that they expected out of it? What's an example of a property where someone might buy it at the peak? What would they be purchasing it at, and over what period of time would they see this become a problem?
Well, majority of the time when people are buying in a hot market or in buyer's market, where everyone is buying at the same time, there is a good chance that you would be buying in some of those pockets at the peak. And one of the ways you can see that you're buying at the peak is that the number of listings is a lot more than the number of sales that are happening in the area, or are almost at par.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you should be seeing the opposite. You should be seeing more sales and less listing. You should be looking at those dynamics. So, and then you would be seeing it as a continuous growth, and people look at prior growth and think that the future growth is going to happen. And if you look at a particular suburb, and the suburb has grown exponentially for the past, say, 6 or 8 months, there's a really, really good chance that it's already at peak. So you have to look at other indicators to see if there is more that the suburb can offer, or this is the real peak. So people forget some of these things, and they look at yield and vacancies, and they say, oh, this is 4%, 5% yield, this is great, there is very less vacancy, and they buy at that point without realizing that, well, there is no growth that's going to come from these properties. So yes, you might have a positive cash flow property now that is not costing you money, but growth is the ultimate aim. That is what you need to chase in the first place before you even consider yield, vacancy rates, and any other factors. So don't look at these high level factors and make these decisions, and that's where you terribly fail.
Yep. Well, great. So it seems like a lot of reactive investors, what they're doing is they're not considering all of the different indicators, and therefore making a decision based on a particular category, for example, yield, and not looking at the growth that will come over the long term. And ultimately, what happens if they make this decision time and time again, they acquire a property at the peak. A few years later, they haven't got the growth that they're looking for, even though they might be achieving the yield. And then it makes it difficult for them after a period of time to continue buying properties, and they probably lose trust in the advisors or whoever they go to reach out to get these properties, because initially they think they're making a good deal. And they trust in these people to buy the right properties, and I trust that whoever they're getting the advice from do mean well to get them into the right place. But overall, without considering these factors, they limit themselves along the way, and end up we've spoken about the serviceability cap, and also talked about this problem that they're experiencing, where they're either still not sure where to buy because they've made the wrong decisions. So what advice, Mas, would you want to give investors at this point in time who may be facing some of these issues or approaching problem?
Well, the first thing is that, let's look at some of these consequences. Yeah. So based on the symptoms, or, the things that we've talked about, yes, it's a lost opportunity and the loss of growth, but it's also that feeling of stickiness. You are stuck in that decision-making zone for quite a long period of time. So you are sacrificing your lifestyle, and, and the worst thing happens that, when you realize the opportunity cost of what you've lost against some of these time frame or the decision making zone where you spend so much time, you realize that there is a lot more that you could have done with this money versus what you've actually achieved. Now, coming back to your question, yeah. So, what can these people do? If they are, in that, if they are feeling these symptoms, or if there are these people who are, I call them the reactive sort of investors. So, see, the biggest difference between a proactive investor and the reactive investor is fear. So I always feel that the investor is never scared of investing. They are there to invest. Yeah, they're never scared of investing. What they're scared of is being worse off than they presently are. And ultimately, them taking a wrong decision in their mindset is that it's going to make them worse off. But them not making any decision is also going to make them worse off, and that is the paralysis analysis sort of situation that they keep moving around into. So, the day they overcome this fear, it is easier for them to make that switch between from a reactive investor to a proactive investor. So some of the things that I always tell these people is, one, formulate a strategy. Know what you want to do, what you need to do, where you want to be. Formulate a very, very clear strategy. The second most important thing is, don't be self-serving. Learn to remediate. And when I say learn to remediate is, don't be emotionally attached to the property. If the property hasn't done well, look at the indicators, follow the indicators. If you know that there is no more growth coming in that sort of pocket of the area for the next 2 to 3 years, then learn to remediate. Let it go, buy something else, and move. Remember that property is another investment class. It's not emotionally attached, or it's not just because you've made a decision you can't be wrong. That's fine. It's okay to be wrong. So set up a strategy, learn to remediate, have an end goal, and also surround yourself with a great team. It's also important to find a good tax agent, good accountant, good buyer's agent, good developer, good mortgage broker. Don't just believe in what people are saying. Do some value, see what value that these people have provided, and don't just look at the reviews on Google, or don't just look at the reviews that people are talking about. Actually look as to how many property cycles these people have been servicing. I think that's the key, because they might have started 2 or 3 years ago where the property has been booming. So you would see that they have done significantly well. Unless and until the buyer's agent has done significantly well over a number of property cycles, you cannot really judge or tell whether they are good or bad. Same goes with developers, same goes with JV partners, same goes with accountants. Be surrounded by a really good team. Be an informed but quick decision maker. That's very, very important. So that you're trusting the decisions that you're making based on evidence. Don't follow me. I always say, don't follow me, don't follow anyone else. Follow the data, follow the evidence, and follow don't just follow the market or anyone else. And so if you follow all of these things, and if you change that mindset, you would be in a position where you'd be making a lot more proactive decisions rather than reactive decisions.
Awesome. So I'm just going to recap that, Mars, because
too much information.
It's a lot of information. I know even for myself, even though you talk a lot about these things. So just to recap, and I'll dive into it a little bit deeper. And for the viewers out there, make sure you do comment your question so we can ask your question. We got Mubashar, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Great, he's saying great insight, mate. Keep up the good work. Awesome. So Mars, I'll recap the advice that you're sharing here. So number one, formulate a strategy, and number two, follow the growth indicators. So we're going to dive into a little bit more. Actually, the growth indicators, we've covered that in our previous live. So guys, if you're looking for that piece of advice, number two, follow the growth indicators. We've got that live from last week. And number three, learn to remediate. Number four, have a great team around you that can support you. And number five, be an informed and quick decision maker based on data. So let's take it from the top, Mark. Formulate a strategy. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to property investing, or creating wealth through property, people would say there is countless number of strategies and positive cash flow or negative gearing and that. Nah, it's basic. It's very, very basic. You're looking at three things. You're looking at growth, return, and yield, and that's it. And anyone who's out there are mixing this in different forms based on where they are in their life. Yeah. So when you are in your early growth phase, when you are just starting to get your hands dirty, your feet wet, in property market, I always tend to tell people that chase growth, manage yield, have a buffer. So, so those are the three things that you have to do. When you are getting experienced, you understand how the property market is doing, still chase growth, forget the yield, chase returns, and still have a buffer. Buffer is very, very important. So these three things. So, and I'll come back and speak to these criteria again.
Yep.
And when you are in the retirement zone and you're saying, this is it, I've done my yachts, forget the growth, because by the time you see the growth, you might be dead. So, unfortunately, that's the honest reality. Yeah. So forget the growth, follow the yield, follow the returns, improve your lifestyle, and forget the buffer, because you don't need the buffer anymore. Because if you have done the first two things correctly, then the third thing would set you up for life. Yeah. What people tend to do is people tend to focus on when you're going to retire in the first place. My idea or the concept of creating wealth through property is improving your lifestyle today, not just when you're going to get older, when you're going to get retired. You have to, it's a continuous improvement mindset or the framework that is important, so that you can enjoy the life now as well, while you're improving your portfolio and creating wealth through, rather than just waiting at the very end. And that's why that strategy comes into place. So why do I say follow growth and manage yield when you are earlier in the pace? Well, the reason is that there is a good chance that you would have consistent cash flow. You potentially love your job. You're not really looking at dropping everything and just going head on into property development. And anyone who says that is potentially lying. Property is a game. Even from a passive investment buy and hold sort of strategy, it would take potentially about 7 to 8 years, probably 10 years for you to create that wealth to achieve passive income, so that you can retire, just from buy and hold strategy. Whereas, small scale strategy, you can talk more from that perspective, but I'll come to that too. So manage yield and growth. Those are the key things. When you are young, you're getting your hands dirty, because you would need growth, and have a buffer, because, yes, the interest rates are low right now. You can achieve positive cash flow properties, but you would see times when the interest rates start rising, and you should be ready for that at any given point in time. Now, if you have learned your experience, you understand how the property market works, you're following growth and return, but that basically means that you're still chasing growth. So you're still investing in growth corridors, identifying the growth properties, growth suburbs, but you're also chasing returns on top. So you're managing the yields, even if they're negative yields or lower yields to give you negative return. That's fine, because what you are now doing is you're doing small scale developments to achieve quick returns or manufacture your own growth on top of the growth that the market is giving you. So that offsets the small amount of yield that you're getting. So sacrificing some yield to get better returns is a better strategy in the medium term. So you can make quick money in those small scale developments where you're doing 2 to 3 year project every in that periodicity. And by the time you're phasing it out, you're moving into the retirement phase, and that those strategy continues in almost perpetuity. And while you're coming out and you're saying, okay, you've done this enough number of times, you have a number of properties that's being paid off now, you can generate a passive income, and you don't have a passion to do this anymore, then that's fine. So be it. You can exit from that strategy, because the growth has allowed you to do that. The manufactured equity has allowed you to do that. Now you can get in, chase the yield, set up a passive income for you. You would still have cash sitting on the side, and you can go out and invest that cash into other property developers or JVs, and still get 15 to 20% return on top, and sit on the fence and have a better maintained lifestyle. So that's what I mean when it comes to setting up a strategy.
Yeah. So formulating a strategy, from what you're sharing, it depends on where you are at in your investment journey, whether you're a first-time investor, experienced investor, or you're in the final stages of investment. And you mentioned focus on growth, yield, and have a buffer. And depending on where you are, especially if you're early in your journey, a good way of generating growth quickly is through small-scale developments, where you can have those types of properties in your portfolio, have them ready for a time where you need a unlock your serviceability or make sure you don't reach the cap. Also, so you've also mentioned, so I want to go to the growth indicators because we've covered that. Unless there's anything you want to cover, you mentioned learn to remediate. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so remediation basically means that every 6 months you're looking at your portfolios and revaluing and assessing whether your portfolio is doing what your strategy is saying you to do. So, you might have, and this is, based on anyone. Yeah. So whether you're following someone or whether you've bought and acquired properties yourself, that cycle needs to happen. So you look at a particular property and you say, okay, my expectation from this property that was that, it's going to grow by say 15% in 2 years. I've been seeing that, there has been organic growth, or in 6 months time that that growth happened for 15%. Does that mean that you've already hit the peak? Look at the indicators, and if you have hit the peak, then let it go, buy something else in the growth corridor, at a different price point, and keep doing that, especially from a buy and hold perspective. So what people tend to do, and this is the cycle that people tend to fall into, is that they live in a particular suburb. That suburb hasn't done really well. When they start investing, they start from that suburb, and their investments don't do really well, and then they hold on to it because they are biased. They're feeling the self-serving bias that they've made expensive mistakes. Yeah, and buying a 600,000-700,000 property and being wrong is an expensive mistake. So they naturally don't want to admit it to themselves. So they'll hold on to it for as long as possible till they see the growth. The opportunity cost on the other side is massive. So even if the property grows by 20% in 10 years, some of the pockets have grown almost like 60, 70, 80% over the period of 10 years. Some pockets, the properties have doubled, over that 10 years. So the opportunity cost is massive. So just leave that sort of mindset where just because you have made a mistake, you need to hold on to those properties. Remediation means, sell. Remediation means adjust, change, and move on, to something bigger and better. So
yeah, awesome. And so you mentioned some of the things there that and viewers, please comment what questions you might have. I know Moss is sharing a lot of value here, and for some of you, you're probably thinking, I not only need to formulate a strategy, maybe it's something you haven't considered, or you're probably thinking, I need to actually remediate and look at my portfolio and look at where I need to reassess and have a look at things. So if you do have questions around that, and even if you're in the replay, make sure you drop your questions into the comments. We'll either answer it in this live or in the lives to follow. So Moss, that covers learn to remediate. Now you mentioned
another thing that I wanted to add to remediation is, also when you're looking at the properties, always think that, from a strategy perspective, have you aligned your portfolio to your strategy? So remediation basically also means that, for example, if you are close to hitting your serviceability ceiling, do you have development potential property in the portfolio? Have you had that? If you don't, then you need to make sure that you're creating space within your portfolio to have those. Are you living yourself? Is your principal place of residence in the area that you love? That's one of the reasons. You don't want to have a lot of wealth while still living a suburb that you don't really like or enjoy. So that's a remediation strategy in itself. The important thing is, while you're creating wealth with the property, you need to maintain and improve your lifestyle while you're doing it. It's not so much about, I'm going to wait for the retirement to happen, and then all of this magic money would come back, and I'll drive a Ferrari then, and it's a continuous improvement process.
Yeah, awesome. And so guys, if you're tuning in, we've got I'll recap the tips and advice Moss has to share today, and we're going to go deep into the last couple. So to begin with, he mentioned formulate a strategy, so looking at growth, yield, and having a buffer. We've spoken about growth indicators and learning to remediate. You mentioned, Moss, having a team around you that can support you. And that's a very important aspect, and I'm sure this is a topic it might have to be its own live. But maybe what's one thing that that viewers can consider when ensuring that they have the right team to support them in their investment journey?
Yeah. Look, investment is a journey where the accountant, the broker, the buyer's agent, all of them needs to be working for you. You know, even if one of them has a different sort of mindset from what, or from your goal or from your strategy, then you're going to suffer. So you might have, or even like people who do small scale developments and who engage companies who would help them do these small scale developments, for example. Yeah, so there are companies out there who would help you end to end to do these small scale developments. So if you're engaging that company, they might generate a massive return for you at the very end. But if you haven't, dialed back and spoken to your accountant in the first place, you might pay a handsome amount of that money to tax office. So what was the point of doing that, whole small scale, development, because you didn't get anything out of it. So same with the mortgage broker. Yeah. So you might have a really good buyer's agent. They might find you the best possible property, but your mortgage broker was not fast enough or not smart enough or not quick enough to, manage or organize your portfolio such that you have access to that money quickly, that you lost that opportunity. Again, all of these need to be at the same sort of horizon, working for you, so that they have the ultimate goal in their head. They have your ultimate success in their head, and they're making those right choices for you as well in the background, so that they're setting you up on your strategy, on your end goal as well.
Yeah. So just to recap that, you mentioned having the right members, like having them all working for you, whether it's your agents, your accountant, and what was the last one?
Oh, I mean, you
Mortgage
have,
broker.
yeah, mortgage brokers, yeah, developers, mortgage brokers, accountants, buyers agents. People tend to also trust real estate agents. Well, always know that real estate agents work for the vendors and the sellers. They don't work for the buyers. So either you're up on your own, or you have to seek support from a really good buyer's agent to help you, make some of these decisions. So
yeah, awesome. So guys, I trust you're getting a lot of value out of these. Let us know what's resonating with you and what questions you might have. And Moss, is there anything else? The last thing you mentioned was to be informed and make a quick decision based on data. And I know you mentioned this every time. It's probably one of the most important things here. But just to touch on that for the viewers and maybe the new guys that have just joined the group, what would you want to share around? Because
so there's a lot of FOMO going around, yeah. And one of the reasons that FOMO happens is because you're absorbing so much content out there. Everyone is talking different stuff. I always tend to tell people, reduce the absorption of the content. Just follow the people who have been successful over a number of property cycles, and just follow them and try to understand what they have done, and just try to replicate what they are doing. But what's also important is the informed and the confidence decision making. And what that basically means, that don't follow anyone, don't follow me, don't follow any other buyer's agent, don't follow any podcast, believe in the data, understand what the data is saying, understand the indicators, and then invest based on evidence, whether it be selecting a property, so it's very, very important that you do that you descale yourself, or almost like, come out of this zone of, following a particular podcast or following a particular buyer's agent, because, people tend to take you in a direction which they feel that has worked for them, that might not work for you, so it's important that you need to find and identify what will work for you in your own strategy, where you are in your life. So
fantastic, Moss, and guys, so I trust this has been on value for you. And again, if you're watching this on the replay, drop your comments into the comments below, and we'll make sure we answer your questions from there. Moss, what do you want to share with them as to what viewers or Property Investment Australia members have to look forward to over the next few weeks? What will you be sharing in the weeks to come?
Look, there's a few things that are definitely close to my heart. There is this thinking, or this generalized thinking, that people believe that buying a home to live in is the best investment. I personally feel that it's a liability. People who have read Rich Dad Poor Dad would know that concept as well. that, your first home is not an asset, it's actually it's a liability. What's the difference between a real and fake assets, and what does that really mean? And then taking a bit of a deeper dive into growth suburbs and growth indicators and unpacking it more. So we've talked about a couple, in our last live. What we'll do is we'll get more information out there so that people can understand and agree to what we are saying. But what's also important is providing that sort of level of comfortableness with small scale developments or land splits and how they're done, and bringing a live case study online so that people can actually see as to how this is done, how's the value being created, and how can you de-risk, and how there is a lot of exit strategies when you're doing small scale developments. I mean, people are just generally their risk appetite does not allow them to even talk about small scale development. It's not as scary as people make it feel. There is a lot of exit strategies when it comes to small scale developments. The starting point of a small scale development is finding a property with development potential. So I always tend to tell all of my clients, even if you don't do a small scale development, just having a property with development potential in your portfolio is going to improve your portfolio significantly, because those properties with development potential naturally increases more in prices than any other properties out there. So just having them parked in your portfolio is going to add value and wealth too. Now whether you choose to take it further, put a DA, put a building permit, take it to construction, there are exit points at all of these stages, and we'll bring some of that information out there and talk about some of these things too.
Fantastic. Looking forward to sharing that with the team over the next few weeks. And guys, so if any of you are looking to either formulate your strategy or looking to remediate your current portfolio, or even just look at some of the growth indicators that you might be having questions around, Moss, what's some of the questions that people have reached out about previously? And guys, we'll leave a link in the comments below for those who are in similar situations.
Look, I mean, I have a few clients who are in this sort of dilemma. So, they've started off their, property life cycle 8-9 years ago. They've done quite significantly well in acquiring the properties, so they've been active about, buying, some of these properties, whether it be through Queensland or Metro Melbourne. But it's unfortunate that, and they've acquired buys, they've gone out and bought buyers agents to help them buy these properties as well. But they haven't followed, one, the strategy, two, their team wasn't right. And what's happened is over that span of 8-9 years, they haven't seen the true value of growth that has come back to you or come back to them. And it bleeds my heart out to see and share some of this information, because what these people tend to or need to do is not hold on to these properties, but remediate quickly once they see that this is not going to happen. Because what would happen, and this is the true nature of the self-serving bias, what would happen is they would hold on for another 2 or 3 years to see some growth coming in, and that would give them a sense of comfortableness or contentness that, okay, they've achieved something, and it gives a tick in their sort of subconscious, and then they would be able to offload it. But the 12 years of holding a portfolio of say 2 million or 3 million, giving you an added benefit of 300,000-400,000 over 20 years, it's really, really poor. So understand, don't be anchored by a small number. See what else is happening out there and what more can you achieve. So
fantastic, guys. So cool. I'll leave that link in the comments, or I think you will do that, Moss. And we'll see you guys over the next few weeks. We'll have a lot more value to share. So, and again, if you have any questions, drop in the comments, and we'll be sure to answer or follow up in the next few lives. So take care, guys. Bye for now.
Thank you very much. Bye.